Hello, everyone, and welcome to America's Conservative Podcast. Yes, I'm back. This is not a tape show. Well, it's tape, but it is a new show. I'm your host, Ed Denzel. I've been gone for 2 weeks, if you didn't know. I will be honest with you that I have not listened to Red State Talk Radio for the past 2 weeks, so I don't know what they were playing in my place. I'm just going to be honest with you about that. I had other things to do. Was up in Pennsylvania seeing my parents. Had a great time with them. The time goes so fast. My mom is in pretty good health. I saw her steadily improve the 2 weeks that I was there, to the point where she's actually walking around the place, the house that my parents live in now. Not smoothly, but far cry from where she was just a few months ago. So that was very positive. Had some good meals. I think I put on about 5 pounds in the last 2 weeks with all the great food that I ate, either going out to eat or being cooked for me, because as you know, I don't cook. Got to see a lot of family, got to see some friends, and once again, the time goes so fast. But I'm back here in Madeira Beach, Florida, where I do this show, America's Conservative Podcast. Of course, that is the new name for this show. And in this show today, I'm going to be detailing the way this show is going to go now. But up there in Pennsylvania, it was funny. Like I said, I ran into a lot of family members and then friends of my parents as well who came over to see my parents. Got to see a good friend of mine, Brad, who came over and watched a Pirate game with me and my parents last Saturday. I lived with Brad and his girlfriend/wife when I first moved to Las Vegas way back in 1998. Yeah, I'm old. I turned 46, by the way, while I was gone. My birthday is August 1st. Had a nice, just didn't do much, just kind of sat around for my birthday, which was that Monday. Watched Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal with my mom. Took her for a walk in her wheelchair. She can't walk around in the neighborhood, so I put her in a wheelchair and we just kind of wheel around for like a half hour. She takes her camera. She takes pictures of birds and animals and things. But I turned 46 while I was gone, so that was weird. So I'm almost 50. It's just unbelievable. It's just completely unbelievable that I'm that old. But regarding this show and what happened while I was gone, what I encountered up in Pennsylvania, between my parents, my other family, I got to see my brother and my sister and their spouses, and my biological mother, Suzanne, while I was there. Between all of them, they all know that I'm a never Trump person, and they all tried to convince me in one way or another that I need to vote for Trump. And you will know that I tried to avoid most political discussion while I was gone for those 2 weeks, simply because I know that eventually it's going to come back to you need to vote for Trump just because the other person is Hillary Clinton. I know that that's what it's going to come back to, no matter what the topic is. We could start out with Barack Obama and eventually getting around to voting for Donald Trump. We could start talking about aliens, if aliens exist, and the discussion would eventually come back around to, Ed, you need to vote for Donald Trump. So I did my best to steer the conversations in other directions. In fact, I voiced on this show last year, and probably it's come up even more than that everybody who knows me well, the people who are in my personal life, know that I do this show. And it's always amazing to me when I get into group situations with my family or friends that they will go on politics for 5-10 minutes and never ask my opinion at all. That I used to be really, really happy. That used to always a little bit frustrate me. I mean, if they were talking about physics and I had a doctorate in physics, I think eventually, pretty early in the conversation, they'd turn to me and say, "Hey Ed, what do you think about that?" But it doesn't go that way with politics, and I'm not making fun of my family or anything. But it's just interesting how that happens, and I used to get frustrated by it. Now that the topic is Hillary versus Donald, I'm not bothered at all if people don't want to include me in the conversation. I'm not. They could just go on for days, and I wouldn't answer. I wouldn't say a word. Really, because their opinions just differ from mine. I don't mind sitting it out at all. So I ran into that while I was at home. And once again, I love my family very much. I enjoyed seeing all of them. But I think it's helpful for all of you to know the kind of situations that I get into, not on a daily basis, because I don't run into a daily basis here living in Florida. But when I'm around my family more, like in Pennsylvania for a couple weeks, it does pop up. And the reason I think, once again, my opinion has changed about talking about politics and whether I'm asked about it or not simply has to do with everybody else I know who is a somewhat Republican is going to vote for Donald Trump, and I know that I'm not. And I know that no matter what the topic is, it's eventually going to come back to that, and they're going to tell me I'm crazy. And when I say I'm not, they're going to say, well, I guess you hope that, Hillary Clinton wins. I guess that's a vote for Hillary. I guess you want Hillary to win. And it's so, I don't know. What's the word to use? It's a little bit disgusting. Remember, the reason if Hillary wins, the reason she's going to win is because at least one person is going to vote for her. The reason Donald Trump, if he wins, the reason he's going to win is because at least one person votes for him. Whereas here's what I know. If everybody in the United States who is registered to vote, and all those people were going to vote illegally, if all of them were not vote for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, neither of those two would win. Just remember that. So what it means is the people who actually vote for either one are actually going to be the people who determine whether one of those two wins or not the people who don't vote. I hope you can follow me on that logical progression. And in fact, a couple of friends of my parents came over to the house earlier this week. And once again, me just staying out of it, the topic of Hillary versus Donald Trump popped up. And these two people know that I do this show. I don't know if they've ever listened, but they know. And one of them said to me about, we just have to vote for Trump. And I just said, no, you don't. And I just tried to put it very simply. It's going to be the people who vote for Hillary or Donald who are going to determine whether either of those win. Not all of us who don't vote for them. If everybody doesn't vote for either of them, neither of them can win. So this is the exact reason I just try to stay out of all of it. On top of the problem that I think that I'm abnormally sensitive to this type of stuff because I've written fiction books, and is one of the biggest rules regarding writing fiction is staying away from cliches. Those statements, those sayings, those phrases that are so common that they're not creative at all. When they were originally thought of, they were the most creative thing in the world, but 100 years later, 500 years later, if you use those phrases, put those words together, it's seen as being kind of a shortcut, kind of cheap, kind of lazy. So, and as you know on this show, if I use a cliche, because I do the show off the top of my head with very few notes. Whereas when you're writing, you get every chance in the world to change every word that you put into the computer through editing. I'll even say, if I use a cliche on the show, I'll even say, nice cliche, Ed. You've heard me do that. if you've been listening to this show for a while. The other part, I think the reason that I have problems talking about politics with people these days is also because of so many cliches that come out of the conversation. I'm just sick of it. If I have to listen to one more person say, we have to take our country back, and we're the only patriots left and all this stuff, these cliches, which I don't even know are necessarily true. I suppose maybe to go back to that physics analogy, if I were a physics professor, it would be like me talking to some first-year freshman student and the freshman thinking he knew more about physics than I do. That's kind of what it's like. I also don't like it, and this happened a couple times over the last couple weeks, when people ask my opinion about something and then I give it, and then, no, that's wrong. This is the exact reason why, for the most part, I just try to stay out of politics in discussions in public these days. These are the things that I run into, and it's just a little degrading. I'd like to just have this show where you can tune in because you choose to. You can choose to download it to your phone or wherever else, your computer. If you choose to not tune in, well, that's fine too. Because having discussions, the way that I've continued to have them over the years with people, wears me out. Now, what does that... Now, you may find it strange then that one of the new things I'm going to be doing on this show is, while I was gone, I started contacting people who follow me on Twitter, just regular people. Made a list, started going through all of the followers, and I have quite a few followers on Twitter, and I haven't been engaging with them enough. And I wanted it, and I figured out I need to do that in a way that's constructive, not kind of just little, fakey. Like just, sending a message out to some of them, hey, how are you doing today? So, I didn't want to do anything like that because it's so cheap. So instead, I have chosen to invite some of these people who follow me on Twitter, who maybe listen. I don't know if these people listen to the show or not, truthfully. But some of the people on my Twitter feed who tweet quite a bit, have a lot of followers, seem to be popular, just regular people, I've invited them to come on to the show. And I am going to start talking to regular conservatives about politics on the show. I think I'm going to do one a week. There's going to be one show a week, I hope I can keep that up, where instead of me talking for the entire 55 minutes, I'm just going to, and it's not going to be live, I'm going to record the conversation and then you're going to hear it. But the plan is just, and I don't know any of these people personally, none of them. But I've emailed some of them. I told them my plan. I'm sick of conservative shows doing, having experts on, military experts, economics experts. I'm sick of it, and I know other people on Red State Talk Radio do that. The reason I'm sick of it is because that's become a cliche. And it hasn't helped. It has not helped conservatism at all to have all these experts on telling everything that they know. Because as I've told you, eventually it comes down to the people that go and vote. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to conservative voters. And I don't mean like a 1-minute conversation. We're going to have a good, I can only go for 55 minutes. We're going to do at least a good half hour to 40 minutes, and we're just going to talk. The only stipulation is these people can't swear. All right? We may have some disagreements. I'm not going to have any arguments. I just want to take the pulse of these people. We're just going to talk politics. Even though I try to avoid it in my public life, I think I've gotten to the point where it's easier for me to talk politics with strangers than it is for me to talk politics with people that I know. And so we'll see. I'm not going to set these people up. There aren't going to be any gotcha questions. We're just going to start out. What do you think the state of conservatism is in the 21st century right now? And we're just going to go from there. See, what I'm starting to believe, and I think that the change, because I've never had any guests on the show before, ever. I think that the reason I'm doing this is, I've told you for a while, I think that the conservative leadership in this country, first of all, has done a disservice to your average conservative in the United States. Despite all of the listeners and everything that's been sold through all the commercials that get played on TV and on radio and all these popular websites and everything, after 25 years, I'm convinced that we're doing it wrong. It worked at one time, but it has gone past its shelf life. It's like a carton of milk when you show up at your local Publix that has an expiration date of June of 2016, like 2 months ago. It was fresh at the time, not fresh anymore. And what I'm going to try to do is this going to give these people an opportunity who don't have a show to come on and express their frustrations, their positives, their negatives about what they see going on. Instead of it just being a little soundbite on some radio from Rush, Sean Hannity, whoever, who they take callers, they talk to them for 30 seconds, and the person goes on their way. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. This is going to be a way for me to try to take the pulse of your average conservatives out there and try for me to assess where we are and where we need to go. And at the same time, these people to get to come on, I'm sure they have a lot of frustrations. And to be on a show, on a popular internet radio network, and I don't think that any of these people have had an opportunity to do that before. Going to give them an opportunity. They get an opportunity to talk. I get the opportunity to listen and to learn. So that's what we're going to be doing on the show. I hope at least once a week. Because this fascination with experts and well-known people and what they think we should do, and a lot of them being pro-Trump people or just vote for the Republican no matter what, they're killing us. They are killing us. See, I think what I'm going to find in doing this, and like I said, if I do it once a week, what do we do? Like 20 to 25 interviews between now and then. If I can get more than one a week, that's going to be good too. At some point, I'll have enough of a statistical analysis, enough people to perform a statistical analysis. And I think what I'm going to find is that the conservative leadership in this country, so-called, is out of step with your average conservative. I think. What I'm hoping not to find, although I think that I'm going to run into it, is also there's probably going to be some people that are going to want to talk, and they're nice people and they're conservative, but they're going to default to the old cliches that we have been using for the last 20 years. So we'll see. I just don't know right now. But I just want to turn myself more into a kind of a Johnny Carson figure where, yes, it was the Johnny Carson show, and I'm showing my age there, but the reason people tuned in was not just because of him, but because of the musicians, artists, actors, actresses, whoever else, politicians would go on his show too, who were going to be on there. And he had the ability to flesh out interesting things about these people and to make for a very entertaining show. That's what I'm going to try to do. Yes, it's America's Conservative Podcast. Yes, it's hosted by me. Yes, I'm the one that's responsible for the show. But I want to try to make these regular conservatives who come on here the stars. Because I think that that's the way we as conservatives are going to have to move forward. Because I don't think our conservative leadership is reliable enough. It bends in too many directions to too much non-conservative stuff. And it may be after doing these interviews, and I will do them as long as somebody wants to come on, it may be that we find out that people who call themselves conservative really aren't as conservative as we think. I'm once again, not setting these people up. I just want to talk to these people. I want to see what's in their heads. I want to see where their conservatism is, just to talk politics, if that's what you want to call it. Because I think what Donald Trump has exposed, not because he wanted to, there wasn't a plan, but what this primary season exposed is that there are a lot more factions within what you would call the Republican Party, and I'm not part of it anymore, but within what you would call the Republican group than we thought. It doesn't just break down to the establishment versus the grassroots. In each of those groups, there are smaller groups that bend, twist, turn, go backwards according to whatever is going on. And it's one more reason why, for so much time, I have avoided the term establishment. I just don't know what that term means. It means whatever somebody wants it to mean. Somebody can be establishment today, can be grassroots tomorrow. Grassroots today, establishment tomorrow. Or, a mixture of both. And when a word can mean anything, then it means nothing. Just like grassroots. Same thing. I don't know what that means anymore. People working out of their house, people raising their own money, I don't know. Nobody wants to be a part of the establishment. Everybody wants to be a part of the grassroots because that's seen as a better term. But we know a lot of people who call themselves grassroots aren't. But they get away with it, and all their followers jump on. Yeah, this guy's grassroots. Meanwhile, he's lived inside the Beltway for 20 years. I don't know what to tell you. So in trying to get regular people on my show and really, really talk to them, I'm going to try to cut through all of that. Not going to have any politicians on here. If I find out that one of these people is running for some office somewhere, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm not helping politicians here. I just want regular people, whatever their professions are. They're retired, they're grandmothers, I don't care. But they can't be famous, and they cannot be running for office. They can't be shilling for some candidate. They do that, that's going to get cut off too. I just want to talk about conservatism, what it's doing right, what it's doing wrong, and I think that can fill up a lot of time. All right, and I really appreciate these people who I've reached out to in the last 2 weeks while I was in Pennsylvania, emailing them, and them being very interested in being on this show. Okay, and I appreciate it. If they're listening right now, I appreciate it, and I'll be contacting all of you very shortly to line up, the first appearances, and I think that I have the technological side of it all figured out, that it's going to sound just fine. Although when you're recording over a cell phone or however we ended up doing it through Skype, it never sounds quite as good as what you're listening to right now, me speaking into my microphone going right into my Mac Mini. Speaking of which, while I was home, I helped my dad buy a new computer. And I am just going totally off on a different tangent. I am awestruck by how cheap computers are these days. My dad bought a brand new Dell, just a desktop computer. He was thinking about getting a laptop, and then we kind of dismissed that idea. But the computer that he had, I'm going to guess, was a Gateway computer, and it was like 10 years old. And, of course, it was running Windows 10 now, and it was just slow. And he had some virus problems, and that's a whole other story about me being there when some shyster called my dad about getting his computer fixed. That was an interesting conversation, but that's probably for another day. But we went to Best Buy, and between a new desktop and a really nice monitor, a Dell monitor, I'm going to say it's 23-inch monitor, 24-inch monitor, 25-inch monitor, something like rectangle, not the square kind, but a rectangle. It was like $600 or something. It was even less than that, I think. It was startling. And he really likes it. Got it set up, got all his files transferred. I did that all for him over the course. I think we did that. Forget what day that happened. I think it was last weekend. And it really went well, but I'm just startled at the prices of computers. But getting back to the show, so that's what we're going to be doing here. I know others on Red State Talk Radio pride themselves in having contacts with well-known people in the military and everything. They're going to do their thing. I'm going to do my thing. All right. My belief is still that the average person in the United States controls much more of what goes on here than we realize. And I think that's what we're going to find out. Remember what I continue to say. The reason we have all these people in these political positions is because somehow they got enough votes. Somehow. Somebody went and voted for them. I don't know what to tell you. Likewise, when the president gets selected in November, there are going to be millions of people who go in there and make a choice based on nothing but their own beliefs, and they're doing it with their free will. No big force being used. Ultimately, we are responsible. The experts are not responsible. The people who have made money off of politics are not responsible. The people who have political science degrees are not responsible. Pollsters are not responsible. Fox News is not responsible. Rush Limbaugh is not responsible. Sean Hannity is not responsible. It's millions and millions of people who have nothing to do with politics except when they vote. Those are the people who are responsible. And I want to take a sample of these people. I'm not going to have any liberals on this show. I'm not going to, because they have their own places they can go. I may get a couple people just by, I'm not going to say by accident, but I may have a few people on here who may even end up being Trump voters. We'll just have to see. But right now, I'm sticking to never Trump, never Hillary people. And how they rationalize what they're doing, and I think that would make for the smoothest interviews, at least to start, just to see how it's going to go. You don't want to listen to something that devolves into me arguing with some Trump supporter on here for a half hour. You don't want to do that. That's not good. That's not good radio. It's not good entertainment, although there have been shows that that continue to do that. I'm not going to do that here. And I'm not saying we want to create an echo chamber either. But I just don't think that your average true conservative and never Trump, never Hillary people, they're just not getting enough attention these days. I mean, granted, it may be because we're such a small group. Well, America's Conservative Podcast is going to give those people a voice, those regular people, to come on, talk about their ideas, talk about their hopes and fears. I will try to ask them the best questions that I can about what they believe, and you can take away from it what you want. I don't know if we're going to use their real names. I haven't figured that out, at least their first names probably. But if they want to say their full names, they can do that. But they need to be heard, and I want to give them a platform so they can be heard. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to America's Conservative Podcast on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at America's Conservative Podcast on Red State Talk Radio. I want to move on a little bit. I have to be honest. I've read, sitting there with my parents watching TV. We watch the Olympics, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about the Olympics before I'm done. But I was reading quite a bit of news. I did not take any notes. The last 2 weeks for me have been pretty laid back. Really the most work I got done while I was gone was working on my other show that's going to be coming out at the end of this month, my missing person show called Unfound. I've lined up some great interviews, talked to some very interesting people over the last 2 weeks that I think that are going to make that show good. And once again, it's a situation where I want to give those people a platform to talk about the people that they lost, if it's a family member or some expert on a disappearance or whatever. I want to give those people a platform. So most of the work I did while I was gone was on that, and even that was not a ton of work. It just was quality time that I put in. But I was reading a lot of news, and just a couple news items. Anything that I talk about now is going to be old. But did you see that Paul Ryan easily won in the primary in Wisconsin? And the reason I'm talking about that is a couple months ago, Sarah Palin, among others, delivered a shot across Paul Ryan's bow, Paul Ryan's campaign's bow, that they were going to try to primary him in Wisconsin because of him not showing enough support for Donald Trump. Well, if you don't know, Paul Ryan won very, very, very easily. In fact, I'm going to guess that he won his primary just as easily as he has any other year. Maybe it was the easiest ever. I'd have to go back and check the numbers from the prior years. But see, this is the kind of stuff, if you are a pro-Trump person, that you need to think long and hard about. Promises not delivered. Now, I will tell you, I'm going to guess that when Sarah Palin came out and said that a couple months ago, I knew there was no chance of that happening. I think I said as much on this show. It wasn't a huge topic on this show, but I remember talking about it. And I just thought that I just don't see that happening. There were already polls taken in that state that showed that Paul Ryan would win at least the primary part of his reelection fairly easily. And then she goes in there, says that, and it doesn't help one bit. But I'm guessing that there were a lot of pro-Trump people that heard her say that and believed her. Now, why did you believe her? I'd like to know that. Why did you believe her? Because it was her saying it? Because you hate Paul Ryan so much? See, these kinds of promises and outrageous, boastful statements do nothing to help anybody. In fact, all they do is create lofty expectations that are never going to be delivered upon. And you can add this to the stack of reasons that I'm not voting for Donald Trump. But he won quite easily. And I'm guessing that in the general election, we'll just have to see. I mean, it's going to really have to do maybe at least in Wisconsin with how well Donald Trump runs there. I don't expect he's going to run very well. In fact, I think that there are more signs than ever that Donald Trump is going to get trounced. And I think that it's going to affect some House seats and some Senate seats. I can't see that being any different. I think that some other politicians, Republican politicians, are going to be hurt by Donald Trump running for president. I have made the oath that here in Florida I'm not voting for either Hillary or Donald Trump, but I will show up to vote. And if I think that some of these other people have earned my vote, then I'll vote for them. If not, then I just won't vote for them. But we'll see what Paul Ryan's going to do in the general election. But see, this is the problem when you start getting behind people instead of ideas. Now, I want to know if Sarah Palin and Ann Coulter and the rest of them hate Paul Ryan so much, are they going to now support the Democrat in that state? I know how much they make fun of us as never Trump people saying, well, if you're not going to vote for Donald Trump, then that's automatically a vote for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, but the difference is I hope neither of them win, even though I know that's an unrealistic expectation. My belief, though, is now at this point where Paul Ryan is actually going to get to run for his office again in that office, not his office, that office in Wisconsin, that they may actually be hoping that the Democrat wins, which is surely farther that I'm going in not voting for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. But I suspect these last few days, since Paul Ryan did not get primaried, that it has gone through their heads that Paul Ryan still needs to lose in that state, and they might be secretly hoping that the Democrat wins just to prove a point. And it's funny how they claim that we never Trumpers are the one who is trying to prove a point, whereas I think that most never Trumpers, 95% of us, aren't for Hillary either. There is that small faction. And there have been articles out there about people who are turned off by Donald Trump, Republicans who are turned off by Donald Trump, who are now going to go over and vote for Hillary Clinton just because. That's not going to be me, but it is a group that exists. When the truth is that Paul Ryan, although he doesn't have the greatest conservative review.com rating, his, what do they call it, the Liberty Score? It surely is better than the alternative. And surely he has done enough for conservative causes to earn conservative votes in that state. I guess maybe to Sarah Palin and Ann Coulter that they're still going to hope the Democrat wins. Then I take you down to Texas, where Senator Cruz is running. And is there a possibility that he could lose his reelection? Is he up for it this year? I'm not sure, but let's just put it this way. There are some polls out there in Texas that show that he may have a problem winning reelection there, whether it's in November or whenever he is up for election. I'm going to guess maybe 2012, 2010. I'm going to have to think about that. But here, that the only way that can happen in the state of Texas is if a bunch of Republicans are going over and voting for the Democrat. Why? Just because Ted Cruz didn't support Donald Trump. So here all those pro-Trump people are saying, well, if you don't vote for Donald Trump, it's a vote for Hillary Clinton. All of us saying we're not voting for either, but they have no problem then switching over and actually voting for a Democrat to defeat a Republican just because that Republican said vote your conscience. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz is one of those conservative senators in the Senate. He might be one of the most conservatives to ever serve in the Senate in the last 30 years. And there are a bunch of Republicans who are now going to go over, switch over, and vote against him just because he wouldn't support Donald Trump. This is what happens when you follow people, not ideas. Even in the military, where you are expected to listen to your superior officer, there are cases where you're allowed to not. Right? Now, you may pay some consequences for that. Not that every order should be questioned. But not even in the military. If your commanding officer says, jump out of this plane at 20,000 feet without a parachute, you don't have to listen to that order. But I tell you what, it seems that Trump people will do that. They'll just take any marching orders that you can give them. Not a majority of them, but enough of them. Once again, this is what happens when you follow people, not ideas. When you attach yourself to a person and all of their wicked wants and desires, instead of having some principles based on freedom and rights and small government. Of course, none of that is what Donald Trump supports. So we'll see. I personally believe that Ted Cruz, whenever he is up for re-election, is going to have no problem. I think. But I think that if you look at the polls just recently, what's going on in that state, that there is a little bit of that revenge factor going on there, just as they tried to do that with Paul Ryan in Wisconsin, and it didn't work. Meanwhile, 5 years ago, Sarah Palin and Ann Coulter loved Paul Ryan. And Ann Coulter and Sarah Palin, and I just keep those names, Sean Hannity, whoever else, loved Ted Cruz not so long ago. Now they want to trash him just because of a guy, Donald Trump, who, I keep having to say it over and over and over, is not a good guy, is not a conservative, and I think would be very bad for the United States, just as bad as Hillary Clinton could be. You know, and it's a funny thing. I'm going to leave the person's name out of this because I don't like calling out people on this show. But while I was gone for 2 weeks, I was in a situation where this person was reading off all of this stuff, all of these charges that have been brought against Hillary Clinton, all the allegations going back to Whitewater, everything else. It's kind of like one of these memes or chain emails or something like that. Just kept my mouth shut through the whole thing. Once again, I told you, I just want to stay out of all of it. Because once again, I know it's going to devolve into, Ed, you need to vote for Donald Trump, and if you don't, it's a vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm just not getting into that. It's wrong. It's just logically wrong, and I just don't want to get into it. But this person went on. I mean, if you've gotten that email, I have not. I don't get any chain emails, thank God. But if you've gotten this email, you know what I'm talking about. It's two guys talking about, are you talking about this? No, I'm actually talking. It goes on and on and on. It's like 5 minutes long. Kept my mouth shut through the whole thing. And everybody in that group was loving it. They just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Didn't say a word. Just sat there, was not rude, listened to the whole thing. Person stopped. Everybody loved the story. About 5 minutes later, the person who read it said something to me, you really need to vote for Donald Trump. And I told this person, I don't want to talk about it, but I will say one thing about what you read. All of that stuff that you read, Donald Trump knew all about all of it and loved all of it and supported Hillary through all of it. That's the only, and it was all true. So, this is what happens, once again, when you follow people, not ideas. You put yourself in these logical pretzels that suddenly you're defending somebody who doesn't care about you, doesn't know you, wouldn't help you if you were in a jam. But you'll spend 5 minutes, reading this thing. And it's, granted, what the email says is all true. You just forget that the other person running against her supported all of it, knew about all of it, loved it, gave her money. Through all of it. It's just so crazy. But the people who've already decided, see, what I think is that, and see, this is a dangerous place to be, is that there are now people looking for reasons to vote for Donald Trump. And they don't want to hear anything about the negative side. It's been very, like I said, the last couple weeks have followed politics, but really did not take any notes for this show or anything. But it's been bizarre to me to go to the websites that I usually go to, the places where I usually get my news, and read about people who are pinning all of their hopes on something like the Supreme Court. These people didn't give a dang about the Supreme Court until 6 months ago. It's just so bizarre. But now that they're being told by somebody, whether it's Sean Hannity or whoever else, that you need to be concerned about it, suddenly they're concerned about it. Why? Because somebody told them so. Not because that person, that average American is instinctually concerned about the Supreme Court. I'm sure none of these people who are now so concerned about the Supreme Court followed the nomination process, for any of the justices during, let's say, George W. Bush's tenure, when he wanted to nominate Harry Myers. Where were these people then? Probably off golfing or going on a vacation or something like that. Couldn't have been less concerned. But suddenly in 2016, the Supreme Court is the end-all be-all of why we should vote for one politician or another. That's crazy to me. And it seems to me that now it's a matter of convenience for them to be concerned. Something is either important or it isn't. I wasn't so concerned back then about who George W. Bush was going to nominate. You're going to get what you're going to get. The truth is, there have been some Republican presidents, Ronald Reagan included, who nominated and put into office some people who ended up not being so conservative. Way it goes. Way it goes. And on top of everything else, you don't know who Donald Trump is going to nominate. You've convinced yourself that he's going to nominate the best people ever. Well, that's your ego talking. That's your vanity talking. That's your rationalization, because there's no proof of that. No proof of that. He just put out a list like 6 months ago. And one of the guys on that list just happened to be a justice who has made fun of Donald Trump since day one, which means to me the list was just names. They didn't research any of these people. Had they, that guy wouldn't have been on the list. So it's just funny now that, and the reason it comes down to Supreme Court justice is because everything else has been torpedoed. The wall, trade, everything else, all of the fallacies of all of it have been shown. They're all lies. The only thing that these Trump people were trying to rationalize, their way through this is Supreme Court justice, because it hasn't been done yet. You don't get to make those selections. Donald Trump has not come out and said, I will definitely nominate this person. He hasn't done that. He has said that he would nominate his sister as much as he hasn't said he would nominate anybody. It's just funny to me. It's embarrassing. I don't know if these people realize how stupid they look. And how they should be embarrassed. It's obvious they aren't at all. And it's bizarre to me that then people start worrying about the Supreme Court when I know that some of these people are actually pro-abortion. And they don't own guns. But they're Republicans. But we know the Republicans come in all shapes and sizes. Well, you should be worried about your gun rights. And I'm like, you don't even own a gun. You should be worried about, the pro-life. You're pro-choice. What do you want the court to stay exactly the way it is? It's just kind of funny. The way you live your life, the Supreme Court should stay just the way it is for you. And you're telling me that you're concerned about it. Just so you can get one politician elected. Okay. All right. So, it was an interesting 2 weeks. Like I said, I tried to avoid the political discussions as much as I could. I really, truly did. One more thing before I go. This time goes so fast. Trump talking about, and this is a somewhat new story, talking about how he says that Barack Obama created ISIS. We've been through this, I don't know how many, not recently, but how many times on this show. ISIS would not have existed had the United States military not pulled out of Iraq in 2011. It already existed at that time, but it was a bunch of, it was a very weak terrorist group. They pulled out, ISIS saw a vacuum and took advantage of it. Mm-hmm. So, and then Donald Trump doing this show with Hugh Hewitt, and Hugh Hewitt should know better than to have that idiot on his show. But once again, all of these so-called conservatives, leaders, media people trying to get Donald Trump on their show. Why? Just because it's good for ratings. At least when I have regular people on my show, I'm not doing it for ratings. Because, rating, no offense, but regular people being on your show does not boost your listenership necessarily. I'm doing it because of the principle of it. But what did he say to Hugh Hewitt after that? He said something Hugh Hewitt tried to coax Donald Trump to kind of back away from Obama created ISIS. Well, but no, Donald Trump turned right into the curve, and Hugh Hewitt tried to, talk him out of it. And what did Donald Trump say? Hey, everybody's loving it. Everybody loves that I said that. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. It only matters if people like it or not. And that is what you call populism. Right? That's how we get an ever-expanding government. You know why? Because a bunch of people like it. Whereas the only way to govern, the only way to stick true to your principles and to make any sort of sense is sometimes, you know what, you're going to have to do things that people don't like. Donald Trump doesn't care what he said is not true or not. He only cares that people like it. There's a reason, the best analogy I always give to this is what? Sports fans and their teams. There's a reason general managers don't allow fans to pick players in the drafts or anything else. There's a reason. Same way here. Politicians have to have the courage enough at some points to go against what their constituents think. And that's not happening right now. But Donald Trump, he's going to be part of it. He's just going to look what everybody likes and does it. Doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Doesn't matter if it expands government, shrinks government. People want what they want, and it sounds like he's going to give it to them. Maybe. But he's only going to say things if people like it. It doesn't matter if it's conservative or not, liberal or not. It's going to be a disaster. I'm trying to tell you, but I got to go. You've been listening to America's Conservative Podcast on Red State Talk Radio. You know where to find me. I'm kind of running out of time on this recording. Went a little long. But you can find me in Podomatic and iTunes now. And I hope you all have a great weekend. You've been listening to America's Conservative Podcast.